Social realism is an international multi-stranded art movement often depicting the lives of the poor and working class, also maintaining a focus on family and community solidarity, originating from British cinema. Social realist films focus on working class and imperfect individuals attempting to exist within an unjust social system, highlighting the social and political injustice via emotive and authentic protagonists. These characters' decisions are not simply just a matter of personal morality but forced upon them by their socio-economic situation. The South Korean film Parasite by Bong Joon-ho and the Japanese film Shoplifters by Hirokazu Koreeda explore these social realist elements of class divide and poverty through the lens of lower-class families struggling to make ends meet through questionable means. Bong Joon-ho is known for his genre-bending works, melding disparate hallmarks in his refusal to be defined. His past works Snowpiercer and Okja also portray the gap between the wealthy and unprivileged through different genres. Koreeda, on the other hand, is known for his humanistic approach to filmmaking, and states that his films represent an implicit criticism of modern Japan. They tackle themes of isolation and social invisibility, often dealing with familial relationships against their socio-economic conditions, such as in Like Father and Son and Nobody Knows. I chose these films for their geographical, economic, and social parallels. Bong notes that Parasite is set in present day of Seoul and that the situation of poverty and income inequality is more dire than depicted in the film. In 2015, the top 10% of South Koreans held 66% of the nation's wealth, while the poorer half of the population held only 2%. Similarly, Koreeda has been upfront about wanting to use his film to address the widening class divides in Japan, which have shredded the country's social safety net. In Japan, the poverty rate and the number of people on social assistance has increased substantially. Moreover, crimes such as shoplifting is extremely common, often motivated by economic strife. Both Parasite and Shoplifters portray class divide and poverty through the perspective of lower-class families to emphasize their socio-economic conditions. Parasite does this by following the perspective of the Kims as they begin to infiltrate the Park household, emphasizing social hierarchy and inequality. This can be seen through the cinematography and mise-en-scène. Bong uses camera movement and angles to depict social hierarchy. For example, tilting is used to introduce characters and social class. In the opening scene, the camera starts from a low point and moves downwards to introduce Ki-woo. The camera is angled slightly above Ki-woo, depicting him to be smaller, and hence weaker. This can be seen consistently. As Ki-woo walks up the hill to the Park family, the camera is positioned at a higher angle, looking down at Ki-woo, making him appear smaller. However, it is cut to the lower angle looking up at Ki-woo. This marks the transition for the character as he climbs the social ladder. As he enters the rich household, the camera angle is pointed upwards, portraying him to be bigger and ascending into higher social status. In the rain sequence, the camera once again sinks down to the bottom and points down at its characters. The sequence is thus framed as if it were vertical, with the Kims constantly moving downwards. Ascension and descension can be seen through the visual motif of stairs. Director of photography Hong Kyung-pyo notes that stairs provide important transitions between the two extremes of spaces and relationships. Stairs function as a tool that makes one realize the true identity and place after basking in their momentary highness. This emphasizes the disparity between the high class and lower class, serving as a visual representation of the difference in power, privilege, and ultimately reinforcing the Kim's social standing no matter what. Moreover, Bong's composition of the shots are used to show the class divide between the rich and poor. He does this by effectively using lines as a barrier between the two classes. For example, this line created by the two panels of the window separates their poor son, Ki-woo, and the housekeeper from the rich lady. This line can be seen in the next few scenes. As they ascend the stairs, the pillar still separates them. Even as they walk together, the line on the ceiling and floor splits them again. Unlike Parasite, Shoplifters does not emphasize on the dichotomy between the rich and poor, but rather places its focus on social invisibility. Koreeda uses a family unit of invisible people to depict the daily lives of the poor and the hardships to invoke empathy. This can be seen through the cinematography and editing. Firstly, Koreeda portrays social invisibility through his characters. Koreeda's observational style of camera work, encompassing wide-angle shots, are often used to frame characters among groups of people against their surroundings and environment clearly. This allows the audience to view each character constantly in contact with their environment. Drawing inspiration from documentary style of camera work, this deepens the connection between audience and subject matter, as the audience follows their daily lives as if they were real people. However, characters often blend in with their surroundings, making them almost invisible, almost like how we don't notice the strangers we walk past every day. This is consistently seen when Koreeda follows each character's daily lives. Osamu and Nobuyo are depicted among their co-workers with their actions synchronized and almost mechanic. Both these characters of Osamu and Nobuyo create a sense of homogeneity, viewing them as a whole rather than individuals. This parallels the social invisibility the working class faces in Japan, that they are just seen as part of a bigger machine and are voiceless. It is clear that neither of them is treated with basic levels of human dignity and respect in their workplaces. Aki's narrative also shines a light on the poor treatment of sex workers in Japan. Koreeda notes that the name she uses when she's hidden behind a mirror is her younger sister's name, so behind that magic mirror she becomes her younger sister. That all is part of that sense of invisibility, that no one can really quite see them for who they really are, or see them at all. Both Parasite and Shoplifters portray close bonds of the lower class families. In Parasite, the Kim's familial bond can be seen not only through their chemistry, but with the framing of each shot and the use of deep staging. Family members are rarely depicted alone, often with the others in the background of the shot. This portrays the family to be tight-knitted rather than distant, supporting each other when one is confronted. Similarly, in Shoplifters, Koreeda creates warmth through composition and color. The family is always seen in the foreground, middle and background of the shot, constantly connected and bonded. He uses warm undertones and muted hues to generate intimacy between characters. The Shibata's home is overcrowded, thus every character's reactions and actions can be seen. Koreeda also uses soundtrack to set a domestic soundscape, highlighting the sounds of the characters eating, their daily conversations, providing a sensory experience of a real home in order to evoke empathy. Moreover, Koreeda uses slow pacing throughout his film, with the length of each shot being extended. The camera lingers and includes every movement and action and interaction in the shot, providing a more thorough insight of the everyday lives of the working class and the poor. Towards the third act of the films, both Parasite and Shoplifters depict the lower class to be victims of their own circumstance, and characters' decisions are forced onto them due to their socio-economic conditions. Here, it can be seen that such elements of social realism continue to hold its place in Asian cinema. However, Bong and Koreeda use contrasting approaches to this through the tonal shifts in the final acts of the films. In Parasite, Bong's use of genre bending is most effectively seen as the film transitions from a family comedy to horror thriller as characters commit crimes such as kidnapping and murder against fellow working class members out of desperation to survive with a higher social status. Hopelessness for the Kims are a result of the unbridgeable gap between the rich and poor and the attitudes the rich have towards them. Although the characters are hopeful, their reality is reinforced through the barrier between the Kims and Parks. This is seen through the motif of smell, as a distinguishable barrier between the rich and the poor, and ultimately the driving force of Ki-taek's actions as it violates his own human dignity.
냄새가 손을 넘지 냄새가.
The smell of the Kims is something they cannot escape, ultimately reinforcing that they cannot escape their social class. Bong notes that the jobs these characters take feature a rare moment where the rich and poor are together in a very private space and so close to one another that they can smell each other. Perhaps it is proximity that Bong wants to comment about. In South Korea's context, it may then seem that the Korean class system's injustice, most profound harms, result from proximity, from the intense relationships of interdependence forged between the rich and poor under capitalism. In Shoplifters, the discomforting, contradictory moral and emotional impulses that ferment throughout the film come to a head with the death of Grandma Hatsue. The tonal shifts of the film can be seen in the change from aesthetic warm long shots to darker close-ups with the characters framed in the middle. This is most evident in the interrogation scene of Nobuyo and Osamu, as the close-ups of these characters reveal their vulnerability, yet question their moral actions and past crimes. This tonal shift connotes the shift of control from the Shibatas to external forces such as the police. Koreeda portrays a sense of hopelessness for the Shibatas, as we see Yuri go back to living with her abusive parents and Shota's final goodbye to Osamu. Thus, through his humanistic approach, he makes visible the factors that have brought the Shibatas to this point of committing crimes and covering up secrets to protect themselves. By revealing the characters' crimes yet with empathy, this is significant to Japan's cultural context, as people tend to view crime as a matter of individual responsibility, rather than something born out of society and social ills. Thus, instead of showing a hopeful ending for the Shibatas, he focuses on the reality of the poor and invisible people of Japan. In conclusion, elements of social realism are fermented in Asian cinema, namely Parasite and Shoplifters, albeit different cultures. Bong's portrayal of class divide and poverty through his genre-bending style, and Koreeda's rich use of filmmaking techniques rooted in his observational and realist style, both portray complex and emotive lower-class families against an unjust socio-economic situation.